Good day everyone, I am Rochelle Escalante and I will be discussing Module 3, Lesson 8, which is Society and Language Determinants. So let's start.
Module 3, Lesson 8, Society and Language Determinants. So before we going to discuss the society and language determinant, let's first talk about language and society, the relationship between the two, as well as how this language reflects society. So let's start. Language and society. Language is both a system of communication between individuals and a social phenomenon. The area of language and society is intended to show how our use of language is governed by such factors as class, gender, race, geographic, ethnicity, and many others. The area is what we call anthropological linguistics. So, what is anthropological linguistics? So, when we say anthropological linguistics, it is concerned with form and use of language in different cultures, and to what extent the development of language has been influenced by cultural environment. So, when we say language, language is not a passive medium of communication. In fact, it's the active matrix through which we construct societies and within them our own social lives and realities. It is easy to view language as simply a system of symbols that describes experience, but a closer look reveals an astonishing truth. Language as we use it in our moment to moment living fundamentally shapes our experience, our thinking, our perceptions, and the very social system within which our lives unfold. So, language is the most important aspects in our life. Why it is the most important? It is simply because we use language to express our inner thoughts and emotions, make sense of complex and abstract thought, of course, to learn to communicate with others, to fulfill our wants and needs, as well as to establish rules, and of course, to maintain our culture. Of course, without a language, we cannot maintain our culture. Take note, guys, that language and culture are intertwined. So, in other words, they are interrelated. So, a particular language usually points out to a specific group of people when you interact with another language. It means that you are also interacting with a culture that speaks the language. You cannot understand one's culture without assessing its language directly. So, in a society, it is composed of people, place, and social system. Of course, those are important things under society. So, relationship between language and society. So, the relationship of the two is deeply rooted. The language performs various functions in the society, and of course, the society does the same way. So, these two are also intertwined. They are interconnected to each other. So, question: does a society exist without a language, or does a language exist without a society? What do you think? Okay, let's see. Imagine you are in a community or in your house. Can you imagine what will happen to you without a language? How can you express your feelings to someone without a language? How can you share your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings? So those questions shows how important language in the life of human being. We didn't notice, but language is a part of our life, and it is one of the most important. Okay, let's go to the next question. Does a language exist without a society? So in social linguistics, we have what we call language death. This will happen when there is no more speaker of a certain language. So, if no one will speak the language, it will definitely die. So, language death, nangyayari din siya sa language, hindi lang sa human. Kung sa human, meron tayong tinatawag na death. Sa language, meron din. Nangyayari yon mostly kapag wala ng speaker, wala nang nagsasalita sa isang lengguwahe. We all know that language is also a reflection of society's culture and its perception of the world. It relays demonstrate how a certain language society takes in, processes, evaluates, and, of course, conveys that information. Just like what I mentioned a while back, you cannot understand one's culture without assessing its language. So by the way a person speaks, you can determine where society or where place he or she belongs. So language is also considered as a representation of a certain society or country or a certain place. Why? Simply because once you heard someone speak, you can easily determine where place she or he came from without looking at his physical appearance. Like for instance, you heard two Korean talking at your back. So without looking at their physical appearance, by simply hearing their words or the language they use, determine mo na kung saang place siya galing. Even the way they speak, and of course the language they use, which is Korea. So by that point, determine mo na yung dalawang yon is from Korean. That's why language is also considered as a representation of a certain place. So let's now move on to society and language determinant. In every society, there are factors that determine language use. The determinants of language use in a society are the factors that determine acceptable linguistic forms in a given society. The language in use in some situations is not appropriate in some others. It is made possible through the basis requirements in a given society. So questions, ano nga ba yung mga factors that determine language use? Of course, we have here the gender, age, of course, the location or the geographic. Those are very important. So let's talk one by one. In terms of age, of course, we are surrounded by children at home or anywhere. And those children are innocent. They are not yet aware about what is right or what is wrong. And those children can easily adopt what they heard from adults. That's why we need to be careful about the words that we're gonna use. So if you notice, there are children who already know how to say bad words at early age. They are just actually adopted from adults. Hindi nila alam yung talagang meaning ng words na yon. Nagagaya lang nila sa mga matatanda. Kaya very important na piliin natin yung mga sinasabi natin. In terms of gender, there are language or topics that can only understood by a woman, vice versa, and there are also topics or language that are only intended for men. So in terms of geographic or location, there are certain words that is similar when it comes to pronunciation and spelling but different in meaning. Like for instance, you decided to go to Manila and you bought sitaw. So you spoke Ilocano So the term sitaw in Ilocano is something that is not good to hear for those Tagalog. Of course, it will cause conflict between you and the seller. That's why you also need to be careful about your language use. There is also language use required in certain situations of professional touch. In certain situations requiring professional touch or vocational appeal, there are linguistic requirements for such situations. Like for instance, in school environment or school setting. Of course, we teachers should be careful in our language use. Kasi maaari nilang ma-adopt lahat ng mga sasabihin natin. And those children or our students are prone to this because they are still on the part of learning. At naniniwala sila na lahat ng sasabihin mo is tama. And of course, nagkakaroon ito ng conflict. Kapag, like for instance, may naituro kang hindi tama. Of course, hindi aware yung student na hindi tama yun. So from that, like for instance, you have 40 students and meron kang nabanggit na hindi tama or maganda. Yung pag-spread ng false information or yung wrong information na yun is maaaring mag-divide into 40 or more kapag senior nila sa ibang students. That's why it's also caused conflict. Social life, including language use, is governed by norms, socially shared concepts of appropriate and expected behavior. So the most basic of these concepts are acquired in childhood through socialization. Nung mga bata ba tayo, natuto na ba tayo agad magsalita? Or meron bang nagturo sa atin magsalita? Or we just learn it from socialization? Of course, kahit hindi mo ituro sa bata, kapag napaligiran siya ng mga tao or kapag naririnig niya, they can easily adapt. So, natututunan nila ang isang language ng kusa through socialization by means of those people around them. The language norms adopted are the ones of everyday spoken language. Most especially, natututunan nila ito most especially if they are exposed to it. Lalo na pag araw-araw nilang naririnig ito, mas madali nilang makabisado and as time goes by, alam na nila yung sometimes without knowing the real meaning of it. Pero natututunan din nila yung meaning. Compared to the prescriptive norms of standardized language, these uncodified norms are perhaps less conscious yet more natural. They are more numerous, acquired earlier in life, and mastered by all native speakers. So according to Labov, 1972, he stressed the importance of these naturally occurring norms for linguistic description. He both encouraged to take the norms of the vernacular as the basis of grammatical description, as well as to discuss more truly the nature of language norms. So norms are inherently social. So that's the end of this discussion.